onboarding Clojure as a web developer, or as I miss a letter there. My name is Salvador Elizarraras Montenegro. I'm software engineer at Mexico. So I'm Mexican, I'm passionate software engineer. I like photography, music, and people. I'm currently working at News of FinTech. It's basically a digital bank. They are from Brazil. They are growing a lot in Latin America. So I'm learning Clojure and also Flutter. Right now more focused to Clojure, but I have seen some interesting things on Flutter. And in the past, I worked at Wiseline, it's an American company that had office in Mexico. As a generalist, but I was more focused to the front end. Yes. So let's start. Yeah, first, I will start that. What do I mean with a web developer? What do I think that this is kind of important? Then a quick overview about Clojure, highlights and a bit of code, some testimonials, conclusions, and references. I missed the references slide, so I will work on that later and we'll send that to this group. Okay, you can stop me anytime. Just go ahead. So what do I mean with a web developer? I think that, in technology and companies, we use different terms to talk about positions and that. So I think that web developer is someone that is more focused to front-end technologies, have a glue of backend, like for example, someone that can build web apps, but consume or build simple web services. Someone that likes to ship code faster and do things like that, right? So I think that my background is also web developer because I have been doing generally. Some people also use the name for full stack or whatever, but I mean, someone is more generalist. So, okay, so quick overview about Clojure. From the Clojure workshop book, that is a pretty interesting one. They have very nice examples and it's pretty well written. It's a functional, concise, and elegant language of the Lisp family. Its core, it's small, and its syntax minimal. It shines because of simplicity, which takes a trained eye to notice and ultimately understand. So yeah, I remember in my early days as a developer that I heard about Lisp. I was a little bit afraid of it because, when you are starting to learn to code, well, it depends on everyone, but at least in my case was with C, C++, Java, pretty OOP. So it was pretty hard to conceive another view, another point of view to see things or to see how can we code. For example, I would say like, so yes, that's Clojure. And why Clojure is using Nubank? There is this blog post in the blog of Nubank. So basically, the things that the blog post says is like okay, it's a functional programming languages that you can use it as a blocks, so you can connect things. It helps a lot to the kind of architecture that Nubank has, like it's a hexagonal architecture, and also the tooling is pretty good. It's also, you can do open source and around it. Yep. We'll see more of this in the highlights. So the highlights for me are in three different parts. Functional approach, tools shipped with the language, like a REPL is a kind of a CLI. The testing tooling is already with the language. And tooling around it, like for example, I use Visual Studio Code. So I was wondering if I were able to do it with the same IDE that I use. And yes, I can use it with this plugin that is pretty good, that is Colva, that let me navigate through the projects, run code there, highlight syntax or whatever. So let's see some code now. Can you see my screen with the code, right?
That's good.
Okay. So, okay, this is the exercises that I was doing while doing a course of Clojure, in internal course at Nubank. So, yep. basically the idea of this code is, well, it doesn't have the good practice because I am redefining functions first. Def-end is for define a function, and I have some def over there. Def is just for defining a symbol, def-end for a function. Also, we have things like that let us let us do some binding to variables. We have everything with like if or things like that too. So let's analyze this first example.
It might all be a little small for some people. If you want to just enlarge the font size a little bit, probably help.
Okay. Also, I will zoom in a little bit.
Nice. That looks good for me.
Okay. Excellent. So what is good here? Like, first, I'm defining this function. I'm already documenting this function here with this line of text. Then I'm receiving some arguments in this kind of array. And then I'm doing the code. And everything that you see is via parentheses because in Clojure, everything tends to be or a function or a macro. So in this case, if is a macro, but for example, discount the price would be a function. How do we use functions? With things like this, like if I do this, I'm opening a parenthesis. So I'm doing, okay, I want discounted price. So imagine that I'm doing other function here, which this argument. So I'm saying, okay, I want to take the output of this other function here to be the argument of my discounted price. So I just do this, and I started to do like the functional approach. So yeah, basically, it's once I understand that everything's a function, like the input here is 1000, the output here will be the output whatever that we define in our function here, and that output will be passed to this new function that is called discount price. That's like the main approach of Clojure. We have things. One interesting thing that I saw when I started with Clojure was this, like, okay, what exactly is this? It's like the macro for bigger than. That means that bigger than, I want to know if original price is bigger than 100. If true, I will evaluate this code. Then we'll do the calculations, and else, otherwise, I will return original price. So everything is about evaluations. So for example, I have already running here my REPL. I remember a REPL is CLI for Clojure. I will select this and I will run this. Okay. So I'm saying, okay, for the first one, discounted price 1000. Discounted price is 900 number. For the second one, call, I sent 100, so that's not bigger than original price. So I return the original price. This is pretty good. Also, Clojure has things like, for example, if we do doc map, oh, I cannot use doc in this context. Let me do it in the terminal. I think I can do it in the terminal. Yeah. Because in the terminal, I have already this namespace. For example, I want to know the documentation for map. I want to know the source of map. So this is pretty cool, and that's why the plugins and the tooling around Clojure is pretty easy to do because it already comes with those core functionalities. Even here in this simple file doesn't have any configuration for a project. And if I do this and I hover on, for example, in this one, discounted price, I'm seeing the documentation that I already have here. Also, it's telling me that it's called with one argument, but expects two. This is because this function is redefined later here. So the plugin is a little bit mess right now. But yeah, basically, just to being forward, I will share this example with everyone. We can have things like this, but also we can use a function that is outside in the same context. Or if we want to keep pure functions, we can use things like this, like this is discount price, more expensive than 100, and this is the input. More expensive than 100 can be defined like this, like a anonymous function, or can be defined like this, like this is the macro for bigger than, and this percentage will take 1000. So it's a pretty flexible language. You can do a lot of things. You can express your code in different ways. Every time that you see, like for example, also this if will be a little bit redundant. Like for example, in this part, if original price is bigger than 100, returns true. If not, false. But that's the same than this, like just returning this, right? Like that's very common in languages like JavaScript, like for example. So that's like a little bit of context about what Clojure is in code. So going back here, I think that those are the highlights. So testimonials, I asked 3 questions to 3 developers that work close to me. So basically, they have different backgrounds. They are right now like good Clojure developers. Actually, the third developer, I'm myself, so I'm not considered a good Clojure developer yet, but I can talk about this. What do you like about Clojure when you started to use it? What previous experience or knowledge helped you to onboard quickly in this programming language? What would be an advice for a newcomer in Clojure? Okay. So first, the first one, Edu, basically saying, okay, I like the syntax and not the parentheses. The practicality by functions like thread first, thread last, and as thread. These functions are pretty interesting. I want to take a little bit of pretty quickly just to show what exactly he's talking. Thread first Clojure. This is one of the things that I have seen that we use a lot more. Like for example, imagine that we have a person could be an object. Then we're saying, okay, this is the first thread, then we will use this, and we will assign this hair color to gray from the person. So we are associating a key and value to the person. Then we are updating the age and using the increment function to the same person. So that lets you to do pretty cool code. You can do things like this, like a pretty functional approach to solve problems. Once that you understand this and you can use this and you change the paradigm to use functional programming, this can help a lot to the overall project or team. That's the first thing that he likes. Pedro is saying that he liked that he was data focused. Also, he started to play with functions such as math, reproduce, filter, and so on, because they are a nice challenge. I'm saying that I like the functional approach. It can take a while to understand the syntax, but once that you are done, you can achieve things easily and you can work with blocks. For example, you can work a lot with pure functions, which is pretty nice. For the second question that I asked, what previous experience or knowledge helped you to onboard quickly in this programming language? Edu is saying that he worked with similar technologies and have worked in implementations for CI/CD. I think that this is pretty interesting point because he's saying like, CI/CD is a pipeline basically. So it's passing the output to another input and so on. Pedro is saying that testing, like do testing helps him a lot to do the proper line of Clojure. I'm saying that I work already with a hybrid JavaScript functional approach. Also, JavaScript has functions like map, reduce, filter, first citizen functions, etc. So yeah, also a lot of pre-programming sessions helps a lot to start onboarding, because there is no better way to learn from the people. Yeah, and an advice for newcomers: don't be afraid of a backend. Use REPL extensively. You have a pretty nice tool to do the things that you know you need. You can do experiments pretty quickly. He's saying what is happening if you pass nil. Nil is the kind of null to a collection, as a collection to a map function. And I'm saying, okay, first, learn properly Clojure, and second, have a fully working IDE. I use VS Code. I can do things with Clojure there. I can run testing there. I can even see the dependencies that I have. I can take a look to the source, to the code source that I'm using, and whatever. So that's pretty useful and will help you to optimize your time as a developer. So my conclusions are that Clojure is a pretty nice language to try. It's data focused. That's why for fintech makes a lot of sense, because fintech is a lot of financial and mathematicals and that stuff. So Clojure is perfect for that. Also, we are doing already things like defining floral views via Clojure. Not for everyone, just for the dummy views, like the ones that shows data and shows information. So Clojure is pretty flexible, it's pretty extensible. And the other one is like the community is going up right now. I wouldn't say like it's a strong community as other languages like JavaScript, for example, but it's going up. So yep, I think that's the talk that I'm giving today. I just need to put all together my references and see and send that to everyone in case you are interested in learning Clojure. Yep, tell me if you have any questions or something.
Great, thank you, Salvador. Any quick questions? We have time for a couple.
Gabe, I've got one. If you get an error in Clojure, it's based on the Java VM, right? Do you get understandable Java stack frame from a Clojure error, or is it hard to understand?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. I will say like first, Clojure is, well, just a little bit of context. Clojure is not a type language, but you can use schemata or something like that to provide a schema to the code. And also Clojure prevents you to do a lot of things, a lot of errors. Until that point, it's pretty good. Like if you are doing an error in your code, probably Clojure will let you know, like, hey, it's an error in Clojure code. But I have seen like sometimes something crashes in a pretty low level in the Java libraries. I think that there is a room to improve there. Like you need like to spend some time. If you end in a crash like that, okay, you need to start to look what was the entry point in Clojure, because probably you will see more of huge stack trace of Java. And if you are not comfortable with Java or used to see that, probably you will invest more time on that. I think that's something that also the developers that I know that there is a limitation in that part, but we're trying to figure that with more monitoring and more, like trying to avoid those errors and have good monitoring and have good pipelines, like trying to avoid the developer pain.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Oh yeah, I forget to that's my LinkedIn, Salvador Elizarraras LinkedIn. But yeah. So if you don't have any more comments or questions, thanks a lot. Pretty good event. And thank you, Gabe, for inviting me.
Thank you. Great talk.